That morning, the sky over Aurora was still blurred in the pale gray of an unawakened dawn. The office of Orion Freight Solutions was almost silent, with only the soft creak of the leather chair beneath me each time I shifted position. I had arrived earlier than usual, partly to catch up on work after 3 days off for my father's funeral, partly because my heart had yet to fill the enormous void left behind. Turning on my computer, I saw an email waiting at the top of my inbox. Just a cold, single-line subject. Employment termination, effective immediately. I read it once, then again. The words seemed to drift off the screen. We need people who prioritize their work. 3 days. 3 approved days to say goodbye to the man who had taught me how to persevere through life's turbulence. And yet, to them, my absence, or more precisely, my humanity had become an offense worthy of punishment. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. No words escaped my lips at that moment. Instead, I quietly took out my phone, snapped a picture of the email, and sent it to my personal account, a way of recording the truth, simple and without argument. Outside, the early light slowly seeped through the wide glass windows, casting a faint golden hue over the empty rows of desks. I sat there, loosening my shoulders, allowing myself a long, steady breath. I knew this moment would not define my worth. It would simply mark the end of an old journey. My name is Madeline Hayes. I was once the senior operations manager of the highest performing division at Orion Freight Solutions. For 5 years, I didn't just build a career, I built a second family in that office. Simple birthday celebrations, hugs shared when someone lost a loved one, late nights when teammates still brought each other warm cups of coffee, these were the things I had helped create. I stood up. My eyes lingered over the small but deeply meaningful items. The tiny cactus gifted to me by the team during Christmas, the group photo from last autumn's retreat, and a few handwritten cards filled with clumsy but heartfelt thank you notes. All of it 5 years of sweat and heart now packed into a single plain cardboard box. I didn't rush. I packed each item as if I were closing a chapter with reverence, not resentment. I understood. They could strip away my title, but they could never erase what I had built in the hearts of others. As the first colleagues began trickling into the office, I continued quietly gathering my belongings. No anger. No drama. Because the truth is, my real value was never tied to a job title or a desk. It lived in how I had chosen to work, how I had chosen to treat people, and how I had preserved the integrity of my heart through every high and low. And today, I knew. I would keep moving forward, carrying that value with me. I was carefully wrapping the tiny cactus in an old newspaper when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Eli. Madeline, what's going on? It was Tanya from accounting. She stopped short when she saw the cardboard box on my desk, her eyes wide with shock. I looked up and offered a faint smile. Orion and I, it's simply time for each to go our separate ways. Tanya frowned, refusing to accept my gentle answer. No way. After everything you've done, this isn't right. I simply nodded. No more words were needed. The anger in her eyes was the clearest affirmation that I had never been invisible all these years. A few more colleagues began trickling in. Confused glances. Quick looks between them. Rumors always spread faster than any internal email. Then Evan Brooks, the young man I had mentored since his intern days, walked over. He stopped in front of my desk, unable to hide the fury on his face. You're being fired? Just because you took time off to bury your father? I met his gaze steadily, as calm as the surface of an early morning lake. It was their decision, I said. Evan clenched his fists, his face flushing red. I reached out, resting my hand gently on his arm, a gesture meant both to calm and to remind that sometimes composure is the most powerful form of resistance. No need to fight with anger, Evan, I said softly. We can choose another way. That single line wove an invisible thread among the gathered eyes. No slogans. No declarations. Everyone understood that something profound had been broken today, and just as surely, something stronger had begun to take root. I bent down to continue packing, folding each memory not in bitterness, but in gratitude. Because I knew every person has a destined crossroads, and sometimes what seems like a loss is merely the first step back toward one's true self. Within minutes, almost my entire team, Claire, Noah, Maya, Rachel, Sophia, Olivia, had gathered silently around my desk. No words were needed. Their presence said it all. By 9 o'clock, as the office grew busier, Greg Martin appeared. His face was cold, his eyes sweeping quickly over the crowd before settling on me. "Get back to your desks," Greg barked. "We have deadlines to meet." No one moved. In the heavy silence, Greg stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This could have been handled more discreetly if you'd waited until the end of the day." I closed the lid of my box, taped it neatly, then stood up, facing him directly. "Like the way you discreetly sent me a termination email right after approving my bereavement leave?" My voice was neither loud nor sharp, but each word fell into the room like stones dropping into a still lake. Greg faltered. For a brief moment, hesitation flickered across his face, enough for me to know that, even if unspoken, he recognized the cruelty of his action. But I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't need it. I simply lifted the box, turned away, and walked forward through the heavy, silent stairs that followed me. The cardboard box was gently placed into the back of my car. I sat in the driver's seat, hands resting on the steering wheel for a long moment. The chill of the September morning still hung in the Aurora air, but I didn't feel cold. Only a quiet stillness settled within me, steady, undisturbed. My phone buzzed. A new message. Samuel Reed. "Madeline, if you have time, I'd like to set up a meeting. It's time we talked seriously about your future." I stared at the message the way someone might look at a lighthouse through thick fog. Not as a rescue, but as a reminder. I had value, even when some people failed to see it. I replied simply, "I have time. Let's meet this afternoon." The office of Atlas Global Logistics was located right in downtown Aurora, a wide, glass-walled building, modern yet warm in its design. It was a sharp contrast to the suffocating, boxy hallways of Orion Freight Solutions. Samuel Reed greeted me at the door. A man in his later years, sturdy in build, his handshake firm and genuine, the kind of handshake that said without words, "I see you." We sat down in a small meeting room, bathed in natural light. Samuel listened as I recounted everything, from the cold termination email Greg Martin had sent, to how I packed up my belongings and walked out without raising my voice. He nodded slowly, then said, "What impresses me most, Madeline, isn't just your professional record, it's the dignity you held on to, even when you were treated unfairly." I stayed silent, letting his words sink into me like a gentle rain after a long drought. Samuel continued, "Atlas is expanding in the Pacific Northwest. We need someone not just skilled in operations, but someone who can build a culture, someone who leads through real values." He paused, looking straight at me. "The position of Regional Director Pacific Northwest is yours, if you want it." In that moment, I felt two currents crossing within me. The relief of someone who had finally stepped out of a dark room, and the calm strength of someone who had realized the light they needed had always been within themselves. I answered, steady, "Before I decide, I have one condition." Samuel nodded, listening. "If I come here, I want the freedom to build my team. Not just by resumes or titles, but by character and integrity." A wide smile spread across Samuel's face. "Madeline, that's exactly why I want you at Atlas." I smiled, a real, unguarded smile, after too many silent days. Our conversation ended with a simple agreement. "Take the weekend to think it over. I'll be waiting for your answer Monday." On my way home, I drove along Silver Creek River, the late afternoon sun shimmering on the water like threads of silver. I thought of my father, of the mornings he taught me to fish, reminding me to be patient, to let the river settle rather than stirring it up in impatience. "Be like the stones in the river, daughter. The current may carry many things away, but the stones remain." Steady. I understood. Not because I had just received a better opportunity, but because I had stayed true to myself through the storm. Today, one door had slammed shut, but even before it did, another door had quietly opened, waiting for me. And this time, I would walk through, not simply to find a new title, but to build a place truly worthy of the values I carried. On Saturday morning, while the city of Aurora was still veiled in a thin mist, my phone buzzed nonstop. The first message came from Evan. "Greg just called an emergency meeting. We all have to go to the office right now." Then from Claire. "No one can find the Kingsley project analysis. The contract files are a mess." Next came Noah. "They're scrambling to patch the gaps you left. But you know what? No one understands the systems you set up." I set the phone down on the table and took a deep breath. Not out of satisfaction. Not to savor revenge. Just a silent acknowledgement. Real value had never resided in timely reports or numbers on paper. It had lived in the way I quietly kept an entire operation running smoothly, day after day. That afternoon, I sat at Evergreen Tavern, a quiet little place not far from the city center. The warm yellow light pooled over rustic wooden tables, casting a soft calm over the room. Claire and Evan walked in, their faces etched with fatigue and concern. "Are you okay?" Claire asked, as soon as she sat down. I smiled gently. "Better than you think," I said. Evan leaned his elbows on the table, exhaling heavily. "You know," he said, "right after you left, everything just free fell. The files you managed, the processes you built. No one really understood them." I stayed silent, listening. No judgment. No gloating. Claire lowered her voice. "It's not just our team. The whole company's in chaos. Kingsley Logistics, our biggest client, is asking questions. They want to know why the person handling their contract disappeared without notice." I nodded slightly, the same faint smile lingering on my lips. Evan looked at me, his eyes heavy with something unspoken. "Do you have a plan yet?" I leaned back in my chair, letting my gaze drift to the small lights flickering beyond the window. "I've received an offer from Atlas Global Logistics," I said slowly. "A better position. A place where people respect what truly matters." They both looked up at once. "You're going to leave?" Claire asked, as if she still needed to hear it said aloud. I nodded. "I am. But this time, not just to find another job. I'm going to build a place worthy of the effort and loyalty of people like us." We fell into a long, comfortable silence. Outside, the wind spun golden leaves along the rain-slicked street. Finally, Evan spoke, his voice firm. "If you go, and if there's a chance, we want to go with you." I looked at them, my chest swelling with a feeling too large for words. "I can't promise," I said honestly. "Each of us must choose our own path. But if you're ready to stand for real values, the door will always be open." Claire and Evan nodded. A silent agreement. No oaths, no contracts. We clinked glasses of water together not to toast luck, but to honor steady hearts. On my way home, my phone buzzed again. A short message from Noah. "Wherever you go, we'll follow." I pulled over by the side of the road, the streetlights casting scattered stars across the windshield. I rested my head against the steering wheel and closed my eyes briefly. Not because I wanted to lead anyone. Not because I had anything to prove. But because I knew, in a world so quick to discard loyalty and kindness, those who choose to stay true to real values will always find each other. And for the first time in many long months, I truly felt ready to begin again. On Monday morning, sunlight slipped through the thin mist, casting a soft golden hue over the tree-lined boulevard leading into downtown Aurora. I stepped into the glass building of Atlas Global Logistics with a strange feeling. Not as someone seeking an opportunity, but as someone ready to sow something new. Samuel Reed was waiting for me in the lobby, along with a few members of the executive team. His handshake firm, warm, was an unspoken confirmation that this time, I was being recognized for the true value I brought. We sat down in a meeting room bathed in natural light. Whiteboards were filled with ideas for market expansion and diagrams, mapping out talent strategies. There was no chill of authority here, only the clear presence of people who wanted to do the right thing, and to do it wholeheartedly. Samuel opened the conversation. "We're very glad to have you here, Madeline. And, as promised, you'll have full authority to build your own team." I nodded, gratitude quietly swelling within me. "What I hope for," I said slowly, "is not just people with strong skills. I need people whose hearts are big enough to understand that success isn't just measured in profit, but in how we treat each other." No one interrupted. They listened. They truly listened. Samuel smiled. "That is exactly the vision we're pursuing." That afternoon, I spent time setting up my new office, an open, sunlit space where people could see one another easily and find a friendly smile just as easily. I placed the tiny cactus, the only item I had carried from Orion Freight Solutions, on the windowsill. It wasn't just a keepsake. It was a living testament that even when left behind, I could still keep growing. My phone rang. It was Melissa Crane, an old friend from Orion's HR department. "Madeline, I probably shouldn't be telling you this," she said, "but, Dan, no. Greg Martin has just been suspended. They've launched a full investigation." I thanked her and hung up. There was no feeling of triumph, only a quiet peace washing over me. You reap what you sow. And today, I had chosen to sow kindness and steadfastness. Toward the end of the day, an email from Evan Brooks appeared in my inbox. "Miss Madeline, we've submitted our applications to Atlas, as you suggested. No matter the outcome, thank you for making us believe that we deserve more." I leaned back in my chair, reading and rereading that message. No grand speeches were needed. Just simple acts like this, and I knew I was walking in the right direction. Today, I officially started a new journey. Not to prove to the world how strong I could be, but to build a place where kindness was no longer mistaken for weakness, where people were valued for who they were, not just for the numbers they produced. A place where, maybe, just maybe, those of us who still believe in quiet strength could finally call home. Just 1 week after I officially started my job at Atlas Global Logistics, the first news of chaos at Orion Freight Solutions began to leak out. Messages from old colleagues kept arriving every day, like small waves signaling a gathering storm. Evan wrote, "Greg is losing it, contracts are stalling, clients are constantly complaining." Claire added, "The Aurora Bay project got cancelled at the last minute. And the biggest client, Kingsley Logistics, is threatening to pull all their contracts." I read each message, feeling no sense of revenge, only a quiet confirmation of what I had already known. You can't build a lasting house on a foundation of disregard for people. One afternoon, as I was reviewing the Pacific expansion strategy with Samuel Reed, my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed. Victoria Lawson, the regional director at Orion, the one who once stood between me and upper management's decisions. I hesitated for a few breaths before answering. "Madeline." Victoria's voice was steady, but I could hear the fine cracks running beneath her composure. "We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pen lightly across the desk. "I'm listening." Victoria hesitated. "We just received 7 resignations. Your entire former team." I closed my eyes for a moment, not out of surprise, but out of gratitude. Those people, Claire, Evan, Noah, Maya, Rachel, Sophia, Olivia, they weren't just leaving for me. They were leaving for themselves, because they knew they deserved better. Victoria continued, her voice lower now. "Clients are losing faith. Our biggest accounts are tied to the people who left." I let the silence stretch, letting her feel the full weight of her own words. Finally, Victoria made the offer. "If you return, we're willing to increase your salary, restore your position, even add more authority. Please give Orion a chance to make it right." I smiled gently, not in mockery. but with the quiet sadness of someone who sees a gate crumble because its very first bricks were laid wrong. "Victoria," I said slowly, "what I needed that day wasn't a generous offer. It was simple decency. An acknowledgement that burying my father mattered more than a few reports." On the other end, silence settled heavy and still. "I understand," she finally whispered. "And I hope," I said softly, "that next time, with someone else, you choose differently." We ended the call without any new agreements. Because sometimes, the most valuable thing isn't a chance to return, it's the right to walk away in peace, knowing you chose correctly. A few days later, Melissa Crane, my old friend from HR, secretly sent me a message. "Greg Martin has been suspended. The board is launching a full investigation into how Orion handled leave and terminations over the past 2 years." I simply sighed. No satisfaction. No regret. Only a simple thought. If you build an empire on disrespect, don't be surprised when it collapses over the small things you chose to disregard. And somewhere deep in my heart, I whispered a silent prayer for those still left behind. That they would find their way to rise, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. That night, I stood by the window of my new office, looking out at a sky blanketed with stars. Inside the room, there was no icy silence like there had been at Orion. Instead, there was the soft laughter of new colleagues echoing warmly. A new place. A new chapter. A place where values weren't just called by their true names. They were cherished, like light amid the storms. I closed my eyes, letting my heart settle into the quiet symphony of things still taking shape. I didn't need to destroy the old to prove myself right. I only needed to walk toward the light and let the darkness crumble under its own weight. On Wednesday morning, the air inside Atlas Global Logistics carried a special kind of energy. It wasn't rushed urgency, but the feeling of people who truly believed in what they were building. I walked into the largest meeting room, where sunlight poured through the glass walls. 7 chairs had been arranged neatly around the table, and there, one by one, familiar faces appeared. Evan Brooks, Claire Monroe, Noah Bennett, Maya Sanders, Rachel Green, Sophia Lee, Olivia Park. My former teammates. The ones who chose to leave not out of anger, but because they believed we deserved something better. I looked at them, my heart swelling with a mixture of tenderness and strength. No words were needed. We all understood. Today, we were starting anew. But this time, on a foundation built with trust and respect. Samuel Reed entered the room, wearing a gentle smile. He shook hands with each of them, not as a formality, but with genuine intent to connect. After the introductions, he turned to me and said, "Madeline, they're not just skilled. They are the perfect first bricks for the new home you're building." I nodded slowly, because I knew skills can be trained. Character must be chosen. The days that followed passed in a steady but vibrant rhythm. We rebuilt every workflow, not with top-down mandates, but through dialogue, listening, and letting people be their full selves. Evan took charge of creating a new operations system, lean, flexible, but sturdy. Claire rebuilt customer relationships, focusing on understanding rather than pressure. Noah optimized transportation routes, combining creativity with pragmatism. And the women Maya, Rachel, Sophia, Olivia each contributed to different areas, making sure every small but crucial gear turned smoothly. Every morning, we started with a quick meeting. Not dragged out, not formulaic. Just a simple question. What do you need today to do your best work? And day by day, we saw a clearer truth unfold. When people are respected, they don't just work, they shine. One afternoon, Samuel handed me a folder. "I think you'll want to see this," he said. I opened it. It was a report from the business development team. Kingsley Logistics, Orion's former biggest client, had just sent a proposal to partner with Atlas on the condition that my team directly manage the project. I smiled quietly, feeling a deep, steady peace rise within me. No need to fight. No need for revenge. Just do good work, with a kind heart, and the right things will find their way to you. That evening, our team gathered at a small cafe near the Silver Creek River. No work discussions, no tense meetings, just sharing little stories from the day, genuine laughter, and the deep, unspoken sense of belonging. Evan raised his glass of lemonade, his gaze calm. "Madeline," he said, "I think we didn't just find new jobs. We found a way of living." I looked around the table. Faces that had walked through hurt, taken risks to pursue something better. And I knew Evan was right. We weren't just building careers. We were rebuilding ourselves. One brick of trust, kindness, and unwavering strength at a time. One brick each day. One good deed each day. A healthy, kind, and lasting place. Growing from simple acts, multiplied with care. Just 3 months after our team officially started at Atlas Global Logistics, the first results had taken shape. The quarterly report had just been submitted, and the numbers illuminated on the screen like a quiet affirmation. 30% revenue growth in the Pacific Northwest region. 4 major new contracts signed, 3 of them with former clients of Orion Freight Solutions. A 22% reduction in operational costs, thanks to process improvements proposed by Noah and Maya. I stood before the executive board, calmly presenting each figure. No embellishments. No grandstanding. The truth was bright enough on its own. When I finished, the entire room applauded. Not the polite, perfunctory kind, but a genuine, heartfelt recognition. Samuel Reed, the man who had placed his trust in me from the very beginning, stepped forward, giving my shoulder a firm squeeze. "Madeline, you and your team have exceeded every expectation." I simply smiled, quietly, because I knew this success hadn't come from some fleeting stroke of luck, but from countless small, right choices made every day. Patient, steady, and unwavering in our commitment to core values. That afternoon, back at my office, I received a short text from Melissa Crane, my old friend in Orion's HR department. Orion Freight Solutions has officially announced restructuring. The board has ordered the dissolution of the Pacific Northwest Division due to major client and staff losses. I read it, then set the phone down. No triumph. Just a gentle sadness like watching an old tree fall, not from a storm, but from rot that had long since taken hold from within. Greg Martin had been permanently dismissed. Victoria Lawson had resigned, transitioning into a corporate culture consultancy role, a late effort to patch fractures that had already run too deep. Orion Freight Solutions, once a symbol of rapid growth, was now a fading shadow, teetering in a marketplace where human values were becoming more crucial than ever. A week later, we held a small gathering at the office. Not to celebrate Orion's downfall, but to honor our own journey. On a simple table were homemade dishes prepared by each team member. Laughter, first project stories, memories of hurdles we had overcome, all wove together like a rustic symphony. Evan raised his glass. "To those who chose courage over convenience." Claire added, her eyes shimmering. "To those who believe kindness is not weakness, but the strongest power of all." I clinked glasses with them, my heart overflowing with a deep, abiding gratitude. We had walked through pain. We had walked through loss. And on the other side, we had found ourselves stronger and truer. Before heading home, I paused by the office window, where the small cactus still stood proudly on the sill. It had sprouted a few new branches, thriving, nourished only by light and perseverance. I touched it lightly, thinking, we never truly lose when we choose to stand firm for what's right. We're simply waiting for the right season to bloom. And our blooming season had begun. 3 months after Orion Freight Solutions officially announced the dissolution of its Pacific Northwest division, a small package arrived at my office. No sender listed. Just a simple box. Inside it, a familiar cactus, the Christmas gift once given to me by my old team, now grown taller, stronger, with fresh new shoots stretching eagerly toward the light. Next to the cactus was a small note, penned in Melissa Crane's unmistakable handwriting. Rescued this from your old desk. Thought you might want it back. Orion closes for good next week. M. I stood silently in my office, gently tracing the soft spikes of the plant. No bitterness, only a quiet peace blooming within me. As if a circle had finally closed softly, without resentment. That afternoon I drove out to the countryside, to the banks of Silver Creek River, where my father and I used to cast fishing lines during those endless summer days. The water shimmered under the setting sun, flowing silently toward the horizon like a wordless song. I sat on the grass, closed my eyes, letting the sounds of the wind and the gentle lapping of the river weave into my breathing. I thought of my father, the man who taught me. The river always flows, but the stones stay steady. Be the stone, Madeline. Never let the current sweep away your trust in yourself. I smiled, flooded with gratitude. Because if it weren't for those days of being misunderstood, underestimated, I would never have learned the power of perseverance. If it weren't for the doors that slammed shut, I would never have found the door truly meant for me. If it weren't for the silent heartaches, I would never have discovered the gentle strength of healing from within. That evening, back at home, I received an email from Samuel Reed. Just one line. Congratulations, Madeline Hayes, new Executive Vice President, Pacific Northwest Division. I stared at the screen, feeling a deep, serene happiness rise within me. Not because of the title, not because of the status, but because I knew I had completed this journey without losing myself. Beyond all the losses, I had built something far more enduring than a career. A place where kindness is celebrated, where people are free to be their true selves, and where success isn't a destination, but a journey of living each day, true to the deepest values within. I placed the old cactus on the new windowsill, where the morning sun would kiss it awake every day. Then I sat at my desk, opened my notebook, and wrote in bold letters, "Sometimes, the best revenge isn't making them regret losing you. It's living a life so radiant they can no longer reach you." Outside, the night of aurora settled softly across the city. And I, after everything finally understood, peace is the most beautiful answer of all.